Hello, and welcome to a live taping of the Perspective View podcast featuring the Fortitude Collective. I am so excited to bring these wonderful ladies on. Their mission is to create a space for the next generation of Black and Brown women that affirms and reaffirms, supports, and encourages them to bring their chair to every space they occupy. But I am going to let them tell you more about the Fortitude Collective, what started this amazing group, and also the impact that they plan to make and that they are already making. And then we're going to get into a little bit of details about each one of these fantastic ladies tonight, and we'll cover a few more questions. So, to kick us off, can you all describe for our listeners what is the Fortitude Collective and what was the catalyst that encouraged you all to start?
All right. I usually like to yield this question to Ashley because she does a really good job of talking about how we started this based kind of on a quote from one of our Sorors, Shirley Chisholm. But essentially, this was birthed out of a need for community, a need for sisterhood. During the beginning parts of COVID-19, there was so much going on with us being separated from our workplaces and just separated from people. And just being frustrated with being women and leaders in that space. So I can say we started via text messages and some phone calls as friends trying to connect and support each other through what had been time we could never have imagined. But I think in those spaces, because we are all individual leaders, we kind of learned that we are bosses. We are women. We are Black women who are leading in our spaces and who are being transformational, but we are still running up against these roadblocks of these systemic racism and systems that don't support us. So we needed to create a space where we could come and support each other. So it started by a couple text messages and me trying to connect the dots between my different sister friend circles and saying, hey, I think we're the right mix of people. The four of us have very different viewpoints and we represent very different points of view. But the one thing we have in common is that we believe in Black women. We believe that we are magic, that we have everything that we need in our toolkit, and that we need to adjust each other's crowns from time to time. So the Fortitude Collective was birthed out of a place that need to go to be reaffirmed. We have a sisterhood that is Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, but every woman is not blessed with sisters or that type of sisterhood. So we wanted to create a space for women to come and get their cup filled so we can go back into the world and be amazing. So that is, I think, a good summary of how we got this thing started. So what grew out of some disjointed text messages has led us to 2 years in on the heels of our first in-person conference. I know we'll probably talk about that later, but it just sparked from connecting people and the power of connecting thoughts and ideas. And we're super excited about what's to come.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And you mentioned sisterhood, and I think that is key because all of you, to your point, have such different perspectives and also experiences. So we would love to hear from each of you. You can essentially think of this as your elevator pitch, but who would you say that each one of you is as a person, and what do you do for someone who doesn't know you? And we can actually start in alphabetical order by first name. So I am going to pass it over to Ashley first.
I was going to say it would be fun if each of us picked someone else to describe, but sure.
Oh, you know what? That's a good idea. I like that. I like that, Ashley. A
So
different
does that mean I pick
perspective.
first?
Yeah.
You know what, Ashley? I like that. You get to pick
There
first.
you go.
Look at God. Look at the way he just flipped that thing around. All right. So I am going to describe Quan. All right. So Kwanda Hill is a mother, a woman of faith, a strong business leader for Delta Airlines. She is a fearless leader and a strong advocate for women, particularly Black and Brown women, in the spaces that she occupies throughout Delta Airlines. She is a friend, a sister, a soror of Delta Sigma Theta, and a co-founder of the Fortitude Collective. I think I did an all right job.
Yes.
Okay. Kwan, do you want to say anything else about yourself before you talk about somebody else? Okay.
Quan,
All right.
is
You
Quan
on
on mute?
mute.
Oh no, I think you nailed it. That's me.
Look at that.
All right, Quan, you next. Who you describing?
Whew, I'm gonna kick it back to Ashley. So Ashley, Ashley is like the creator of all creators. Okay, she keep us together. She's a very much so a visionary, and like her business, she's a businesswoman. She's a leader in her space in her community. She's also a cure. I may say this wrong, but this is her line. It's her tagline, and this is sort of what birthed a lot of our ideas for Fortitude Collective. Is her ability to curate ideas, curate vision, curate experiences, and curate events. So Ashley is sort of our curator of all things Fortitude Collective when it comes to, just really bringing that vision forth. She's a generational curse breaker. She's from Rochester, New York. She wears that very proudly. We share the same HBCU, NSU. She's my soror and she's my business partner. That's Ashley.
That was so good, Quan. Thank you. Yes, you got that generational curse breaker in there. I love that. That's my favorite.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go because I'm gonna be mindful of our time today so we can get to the good stuff. So Tamika Wagstaff, she is my line sister, not just my soror, she's my line sister. She is a mom. She is a astute DEI professional. She is a pioneer. I think of her as fearless. She has recently endeavored into things that most women wouldn't have the courage to step out and do. And she is also like this quiet strength. So Tamika is not as boisterous and outspoken as the rest of us, but she is a force to be reckoned with. She is diligent. She is hardworking. She is a taskmaster. Every assignment that Tamika has, she's going to get it done by the deadline and under budget. Like she is just very regimented in that space where, we could fly in the wind and go with the flow. Tamika keeps us on track, and I admire most about her that she wears so many hats and she just does so just diligently. Like she's always cool. I've never really seen her lose her cool. She's just a good calm spirit, and she helps me kind of level myself out because I can get to be a bit much at times. But Tamika is awesome. Oh, and she is an astute shopper. She has exquisite taste. So that's Tamika. Dr. Tamika Wagstaff.
Thank you. That was good. You nailed that one for sure. So my line sister, my soror, Jasia, is a boss. I mean, that's really, I think, embodies everything about her. Her presence speaks for itself. She is fearless and unapologetically herself. She just embodies greatness and boldness. And most importantly, she's a woman of faith, and she can speak those words to you when you need them the most. And that's what I appreciate the most about her, is that if you need a good word, she's gonna give it to you. And she is always supportive and believes. So if you say something and you're like, oh, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, it's never, oh, that's too big for you. It's yes, how you gonna get it done? That's what's there for you. You want that, go after it, get it, it's yours. But I think for me, the biggest word is boss in every form and fashion. She just embodies that.
I love that. And I just want to say thank you, Ashley, for that recommendation to have you all introduce each other. So that really highlights the sisterhood that you all have. And speaking of sisterhood and also how you all started the Fortitude Collective, in February 2021, you all hosted your first conference, I Brought My Chair, Solidifying the Role of Black Women in Leadership. Can you tell us more about the event, including what prompted you to host the conference, the outcome, and anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. Again, so we have this disjointed conversation via text message and a bunch of conversations via Zoom at the time, and decided that our first endeavor would be a virtual conference. For us, it was the first time we hosted that, so we were getting used to the technology and overcoming those challenges. Our first event was super successful, right? We had over 100 women that stayed online with us and didn't drop off during our 4-hour experience. We had dynamic speakers, we had breakout sessions. So in that space, I think for us, it was the realization that we actually had something that was worth fighting for, right? We had something that was worth cultivating and growing and spending our time and energy and effort for. So I think we kind of did it as like let's just see if this thing could work. Like, let's just try it, right? It can't hurt. I don't think we went in with any expectations except for to make space for Black and brown women to be heard, seen, and valued, and we accomplished that. But I think for us, it kind of affirmed for us individually and collectively that you all have something. You have something that's worth sharing. You have something that's worth being acknowledged and recognized. And we have the power of connection. Like, again, we are located across the country. We are in different industries, from government to IT to higher education. So we have the power to connect other women. So I think for us, it was the first display that, one, we are not crazy. Two, we are all bosses. And three, that our platform is necessary, is needed. Sometimes you can feel like there's so many women empowerment things going on. Do we need another? And the Bible is very clear that God will make room for your gifts. And I think that that was the first time that we felt as a unit that God was making room for us, and that, he's waiting for us to keep going to the next level so we can keep expanding our platform and connecting other women, because that's the goal. The goal is to connect women, to make sure we have the resources and support that we need to be successful in everything that we do. So that was the first taste of the Fortitude Collective.
Yeah. Fantastic. And does anyone have anything that they'd like to add about your experience with regard to working on that to bring it to fruition, or the outcomes? Anything surprising that you all learned along the way?
I think we learned a lot about each other along the way. A lot about how each one of us works, how we think, what's important to us. And I think with any group of women, right, when you're working together, sometimes you could get off track. Sometimes, our emotions and attitudes can get in the way. And we were able to not allow that to happen. So I think when you're working on something that you're passionate about and that's important to you as a collective, you're able to overcome all those little things that might get in the way otherwise. So I would say we learned a lot about each other and working together and building. And I think it strengthened our relationship.
I love that. So that actually leads me to another question. Why do you think that in certain spaces that sometimes the perception could be that women of color don't get along?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'll start while the team is thinking. As you can see, I talk too much. But anywho, this actually came up at work today. A couple of Black women at work today were just having a conversation. And I really think it comes from just a space of unclarity, uncertainty. I think that women, when they're uncertain or not as secure in themselves, it lends them to be more catty or more confrontational. Because when you get a bunch of women who are 100% sure of themselves, yes, there may be conflict, but there's not the type of conflict that's unhealthy or that is hurtful, right? So I think that conflict is natural. Humans have conflict, right? White men have conflict, right? Mm-hmm. I think the label that Black women are unable to work together is false. But I do think that because the pressure of society and the different things that make people feel insecure, particularly Black women, I think insecurity breeds nonsense. So the less secure you are, who you are as a woman, as a person, the more you are susceptible to mess, to chaos, to confusion. But when you feel real good about yourself, when you are certain of who you are and whose you are, your capacity for mess and gossip and backbite, it doesn't exist. So I'm excited to be a part of this group, because do we have conflict? Yes, natural, healthy conflict, right? But there's not a space where we make room for messiness. That's a myth. And when it does exist, it's because there's somebody in that space who is not feeling affirmed, who is not feeling sure of herself, who is not feeling cared for, is not feeling empathy. So what we want to create with the collective is that if that's the way you feel in coming into one of our experiences, you won't leave the same way. You can come to us broke down, battered, unseen, devalued, and you're going to leave like Beyonce just gave you in a wig. Okay, we're going to get it together and give you your zhuzh back.
I love that.
Absolutely. The only thing I would add, I think Jasia said it, but it's that security. And even with us, we're all bosses in our own right. But when we're coming together and we're putting this thing together, we understand the different things that we need to do to put it together. Jasia knows her strength. Ashley knows her strength. Tamika has her strength. And I think we allow that space for each other to operate in our space, and there's no insecurities there because we already know we're bosses. We don't have to come into this space and prove that to anyone. That's already affirmed, that's already confirmed. So we don't have to do the leveling up as we're coming together as a collective group to put something together that all four of us are very passionate about.
I love this. And that is that when you think about different perspectives and also perspective views, I appreciate the fact that you shared how you all learned about each other, but then also thank you for being able to dive into that question and also helping people understand that, just because they might hear a particular stereotype, it doesn't mean that that's consistent across the board and that we can get along and we can work together and look at the beautiful outcome, which leads me to the next question with regard to your upcoming conference in March titled Unbossed but Bothered. That title in and of itself sparks a lot of interest and intrigue. So can you please tell us more about the conference and also how listeners can get tickets and learn more about what you're doing?
I think we all should share our perspective on this, but I know, we recently did a conference back in June, right? In Florida. And we were sitting around the table and we were talking about, what we wanted to do. And at that time, it was right around the time where the ruling had came out about the new abortion law. And, we were talking about, okay, we knew we wanted to do a conference, but we started to just talk about, things that still happen. And, we're bringing our chair, we're showing up, we're prepared, we have all of our tools, but still it's something about, the decisions that's being made. The table is not set right for us. We still, competing and having to prove ourselves. So from that, just that sentiment alone, we were like, okay, well, it's easy to say, unbossed, unbothered, but no, actually we're bothered. And I'll say to me, and I know each of us have our own perspective, bothered requires an action. When you're unbothered, you don't have to do anything. You could just sit back. But when you bother and you put action towards that can create something big. So we felt that just the bother gives a whole new different meaning of, we want to be actionable. We want to really enact some true change.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think that, as the last couple of years has revealed in society that things are not what we once thought they were. I think that we have seen the best of ourselves during COVID and the racial uprising and the worst of ourselves. So because we have a seat at the table, my thought is that it's time to flip the table over and then shatter the glass ceiling around it, right? The table is janky, it's lopsided, the legs is broken, it stains on the top of the table. So we have been fighting to get to this table only to get here and say, this is what y'all was talking about? We need a whole new agenda. We need a whole new table. We don't like wood anymore. We want a glass table. So I think for me, it's like I consider myself a disruptor. I cause good trouble in every space that I am, at every table that I sit. And I realized that table is nothing without our presence, right? Black women, brown women, the table is not even a table if we're not there, right? It's not even worth trying to fight to if we're not at the table. So now that we're here, it's trying to figure out, what do we need to rearrange? What do we need to get rid of? What do we need to add to the table? But just being able to say the table isn't enough. We fought to get to this table, and that's not enough. We don't want the table. We want the house. We want the house. We want the block. Actually, we want the whole country, right? So that's saying that the table is good. good thing to start at. And as our Soror laid out for us, we brought our folding chair to the table. Now that we at the table, we keep your table. We like to build a whole new table, and if you act right, we'll invite you to ours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Ashley has a really good perspective on this too, as we've been talking about it. Ashley, share your perspective.
Sorry. On my perspective on our conference theme, I think you all pretty much nailed it. I mean, again, we are tired of the same old, right? And we've moved mountains, right? But we have so many more mountains to move, right? And so I think that the phrase of don't grow weary in well doing, right? And also don't forget all of the things that still need to be done in celebration of the little that we've received. And so I think that's also a part of being unbossed but bothered. It's great to celebrate our accomplishments, right? We do that. We have become really good at that in certain regards, but it's also important to remember that there's still a fight happening, right? There is still a lot that we need to be doing to move forward, not just as a woman, not just as a Black woman, but as people. And so in thinking about our conference and where we are hoping people go or get from this, is that we have to continue to stay in the fight. Yes, the table is not, the seat is not enough, right? The table is not enough. We want more. And I think, that may sound greedy. That may sound like, how much more do you want? But right, life is about growth and continuing to excel. And so I always want more. I want to learn more. I want to be more. I want to make sure that I'm getting everything out of life that I can, because we only have one life. So I'm gonna continue to be unbossed, and I'm gonna continue to get to being unbothered.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that we want to bring other women along with us. So we may be at this point and feel this way and be able to talk about it and speak about it, but there are a lot of women who are coming behind us who aren't that confident in their voice just yet. They haven't found it. They haven't found what that thing is that they're passionate about, and they're still trying to figure it out. And so along the way, we want to create spaces where they can show up and their voices can be heard, or they can find their voice, or they can meet somebody, learn something, find a mentor, latch on to something that one of our speakers says or that we says, that's going to ignite the same type of fire in them, whether it's bringing their seat to the table, or sometimes I don't even care if the table is there. I'll come in your room and stand there and talk about what I need to say. I don't need to sit at your table to be heard, right? So we want people to just be able to find their voice and find who they are, what their strength is, and take power in that.
I love that. And just even a couple of the comments in the chat from Total Worship, the table ain't the table without me. And she said, yes, Jasia. And then the Queen Print LLC said, love that, with regard to what you all are sharing about, the conference in terms of being unbossed but bothered. And earlier, Taquanda, you said being bothered really forces us into action. And when you talked about having more and the table not being enough, it made me think about a recent post that you all shared on your Instagram site. And for anyone listening, you can follow the Fortitude Collective at Fortitude Collective on IG. But they posted a snippet from an Essence article titled "Tech Companies Are Quietly Defunding Diversity Pledges and Industry Layoffs Are Hitting Black and Brown Workers Hardest. Experts say the message is clear." What are your thoughts on this as it relates to being unbossed but bothered?
Quan, you want to?
You
I
go
was gonna
first.
say,
You
Quan was the
go
one who
first.
was like, yes.
You go first, Tamika, and then you go ahead.
I think, and I think you had asked before, is it just tech? And I think it is across the board that diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility work is just not valued in the way that it should be. And we've come out of a time, or we're in a time in our country where it's kind of like it's the buzzword, it's the thing to do, it's what's cute, it's what's cool, all the kids are doing it, so we're going to hire a person, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Well, that's fine, but a lot of times you're not putting the resources behind doing the work. So you're hiring someone, normally a black or brown person, to come into your company, your organization, and do this work, which is exhausting work. I don't think people understand how much of a not a burden, but how tiring and exhausting the fight of DEI work is. But you're not going to give them all the resources they need. So you may come in with the tools and the skills and you're ready to do the work. But if it's just me doing the work for a company, a college, or whatever it is of 500, 10,000 people, that work is not going to be able to get done. Right. So I think it is something that we're seeing. It's a trend where there has been an uptick. You see tons of positions that people can apply for in the last probably 3 to 5 years. And every day, if you keep going on job sites, the numbers get lower and they get lower. And people don't stay in these DEI jobs very long either, right? Because they're thankless jobs. They usually don't pay a lot. You're not really given the resources. And most of the time, the people you work for don't actually support, or they're really not committed to the work, right? So people are staying in these roles 2 to 3 years. If you look at chief diversity officers for colleges and universities, in the last 3 years, 60% of those who started in those roles are not in them right now today. So the turnover is huge, right? And again, it's a thankless job. And for Black and Brown people who already carry the invisible labor of doing the work, even when it's not your job, pile that on with it actually being your whole responsibility, because now you become the person who is responsible for everything related to DEI in whatever institution you're working. It just, it's, people should be ashamed. I'll say that.
I certainly agree with everything Tamika said, and I think I said it before to Mary on your last show. We have to move from moment to movement. At the moment that we saw this uptick in all of this hiring for Black and Brown individuals, it was right around the George Floyd. So the country was very vulnerable. That was just the sentiment at that time. Now it's slowing down a little bit, and you see the numbers projecting. I'm a big proponent of, we have to have equity strategies that tie to our strategic initiatives in business that holds leaders accountable for DE&I. You don't need a whole committee for DE&I. You need to tie it to your hiring practices. Hiring practices have data. That data shows your numbers. That should tie to your equity strategies, and then you can see whether or not you're really committed to it. It's just that simple. As Tamika said, it is a thankless job, but it can actually be a powerful job if we use the right tools, the right measurements, the right data elements, and we tie it to our equity strategies. We can definitely move the needle and close the gaps. I heard a young lady say on a podcast the other day, it's not that we're underrepresented. Black and Brown talent is underestimated. And if you give them a chance and you put your neck out there on them and hire them, you can move that needle. It's a choice.
Wow, that's powerful, because you all have covered not only how it's impacting Black and Brown communities, but also some of the things that we can do about it. And earlier, you all talked about the fact that some people may not have the confidence to stand up in those spaces where maybe they don't have a seat at the table, or maybe they feel like they won't be heard, or they're worried about being one of those people who, unfortunately loses their jobs. What advice do you all have for those individuals that find themselves in those types of predicaments?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, there's laws that protect you from being fired. So that's the first thing that I can say as an employment attorney. There's laws that say they can't retaliate and they shouldn't. That I'm not naive enough to think that it doesn't happen. But I do think that for me, I know I come from a place where I'm comfortable professionally and in my personal life. So there's a space that I'm speaking from. I like to think that even before I arrived here, I always use my voice in whatever form I can. So maybe I'm not invited to the meeting, but I do have a relationship with my direct supervisor that I'm voicing those opinions there. Or maybe it's the employee survey that comes out once annually that nobody thinks they read, but I'm going to make sure I do it. So the thing is that it is unpopular and it's uncomfortable, but for me, it's worth the fight. I don't want to exist in a space where I am tolerated and not celebrated. I don't want to go anywhere where you just have me here just to have me here, right? And I know that that comes from a place of privilege that I can say I can find another job. I recognize that everybody is not in that same space. But I would like to think that my faith kicks in at that point, right? That if I am bold enough to challenge the system, that the universe is bold enough to place me where I need to be. So there's ways to do so that is less aggressive, that are just subtle. It's just asking a question.
Yeah.
Why do we do it this way? Have we ever considered doing it that way? So there are ways that we can challenge the system without coming off as too abrasive or coming off as disrupting the system too much. It's inquiry, right? Knowledge is power. You can ask a question that will make executives change their behavior. Say, hey, I noticed that the last 17 hires have been white men. Do we go to HBCUs? They may blow it off, but the fact that you asked the question has put it in their mind and their spirit of thinking. So I want to encourage people to seek information, right? And everything is not always what you believe it to be, right? So because I am a boss, there are things that I get challenged on that I know not to be true, but perception in some spaces becomes reality, right? So the perception is powerful too. So what things can we control? Can we control the culture that we exist in? Can we control how we show up, how we interact with our employees and our colleagues? So I think there's a lot of things to do, I think, but all requires boldness. Ashley always says we have one dance. We got one chance at this life, right? I wouldn't want to spend 5, 6, 10 years at a place where I couldn't be my full authentic self. Mm-hmm. It's an employee's market right now. If you want a job, you can have a job.
Listen, it's always an employee's market. I want people out there to know. I say this every time we talk. If you don't like your job, if it is not fulfilling, if it is not doing for you what it is supposed to do, you can leave it. Listen, stepping out on faith, even in fear, is important. Again, like Jacia said, we only have one shot at this thing we call life. Mm-hmm. It's always an employee's market. You can always get another job, right? Like, if it is not working for you, then find something else. You just got to be steadfast in your faith that it's going to work out for you, because it will.
It will.
But don't be nowhere where you just being tolerated.
Yeah.
There's other things out there for you. I'm trying to tell you, because I will leave a job in a quick minute, okay? Because I know my value. I'm serious. I know my value, right? And we are not in a day and age where you have to be in a space for 30 and 40 years, and I just got to keep my head down and make sure I get my check. Listen, if it's not right, it's not right. I firmly believe in that. And everybody might not believe in that, but I'm trying to tell you, I've done it. At least twice. I'm gonna say at least twice.
A few times.
Listen, a few times. And it has worked. I want you to know, like, if you are on the right side of things, and if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you have faith, it will work for you. You do not have to stay where you do not want to be. And that goes for work or anything else.
Yeah. But you just said you have to be ready, though. That's one thing, too, I want for us is to always be in a space where we can go to the next level. So if you're in those spaces, and even if it's undesirable for right now, maximize your professional development. Go to every training they made available. Sign up for tuition reimbursements. So there are periods where because of life, you are unable to change the job. You better work that thing while you're there. Figure out where the training and development is. Apply for the next job. The thing is, for us, don't let fear get you stuck. Just keep trying to advance yourself so that when the person comes along, the Black and brown woman you're looking for to pull you up, that you are ready, that you meet the minimum qualifications for the job she's trying to place you in. Don't get stuck being upset, but you wasn't prepared. So be prepared, because you never know what the next step is, but you got to be ready. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yeah. And sometimes you got to put it out into the atmosphere so you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
So when I was interviewing for jobs, when I started my new job, I was clear with them. I'm not coming here to spend the rest of my life. Like, I know people go into jobs and they stay for 10, 15 years. That's not what I'm about to do. This is a great opportunity. I want to come in here, learn some stuff, do a couple things, and then I'm going to pack up my stuff and be on to the next thing. But that's my way of putting it into the atmosphere and knowing that I have to hold myself accountable, because now I done told these people, right, I'm not going to be here forever. So I'm not going to find myself there forever, because I done already told you that's not what's going to happen. But I think too, when we're in these rooms, we have to listen. And that is something that I have learned as I've matured as a professional. I'm not so quick to speak. Sometimes I'll sit through an entire meeting and I won't say a word, but I've learned so many things by being quiet and listening to what other people are saying. I learned what's really important to them. I learned what we're really doing, because sometimes you're in a meeting and you think you're hearing what's going on, but there's a story behind that story. And if you're quiet just long enough, you'll find that information out. And then I collect all of that. So when I go back to the next meeting, now I'm ready. I got my notes. I know what I need to say. I remember what Jack said. I remember what Karen said. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, because, Jack, in the last meeting, this is what you were talking about. I found that maybe just slightly problematic. And I wanted to come back to that so we can have another conversation. Right. So sometimes you have to find your voice in being quiet first, and then being diplomatic in the way you circle back to it.
And the only other thing I will add is also, like, right now, you have to also be intentional of bringing other women along so that they can find that space to get comfortable. I think, and I say this all the time, if you're the only one in the room, you have an accountability to bring others in the room. No other race has that issue. I mean, it's usually the Black woman, the only one in the room, or the Black male and the only one in the room. So it gives, they gives them comfort because they have a sounding boards. So my thing is, we have accountability to create that space so other women can be brought along in the room so that they can be comfortable to, be a boss, walk away if they need to, say something of unpopular opinion. But it's just a matter of us that's in this space bringing other women along so that they can find that comfort.
And all that you all have said, it's very, very powerful. And there were several individuals in the comments just agreeing with you also. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And speaking of which, what can listeners expect from the Fortitude Collective over the next year or so?
Everything. We out here, okay?
Tell them about Oprah.
We outside.
Hello. Like Jacia said, and we mentioned before, our first in-person conference is coming up in March. We are holding some fireside chats in 2023 as well. We want to do some more in-person events as well. We really want to start to bring in more women into a space so we can have conversations. One of the things, and I want to go back to a question you asked in the beginning. One of the things that I learned from our first conference, our virtual conference, is that women don't have sisterhood. It's a lot of women out here that do not have sisterhood. And I mean, I'm hard on friends because it takes a lot for me to call you my friend. First of all, it takes a lot for me to call you my friend. And so but I will say I have curated a wonderful cluster of friends in many places, right? And in that conference, I recognized, just from the things women were saying and some of the sessions we had, a lot of women do not have that. And I am so thankful and blessed that I do, and that I have the discernment to have the right women around me. And I hope that a part of what you'll see from the Fortitude Collective going forward is us helping other women to curate their own circles of sisterhood and friendship, because it's needed. And I side-eye women who we out here saying, I don't really have female friends.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I was hearing that in like 99 and 2003. And we still out here saying that. All of this empowerment and all of this Black love and all of these things that we have. And there are women out here who still are saying that they rather hang with the men and they don't have female friends. To me, that is crazy. Even if you only got 2 of them, like, you need a circle of women. You need mentors, right? Like, you need mentors. You need women who can help to lift you in so many areas of your life. And to not have that, I feel so sad for people who do not have that. So I think that's another direction we want to go. We want to make sure that while women are getting their education, trying to advance in their careers, no matter where you're starting from, we want to also make sure that they are building friendships and relationships with other women, because it is important to have that in your life.
Absolutely. Women don't give each other, we have to learn to give each other more grace. I mean, I'm just going to go on record. We give these men a lot of grace.
Yes.
Our sisters are real quick. Like, no, I mean, we have to learn. I mean, it's growth. A friendship is like a relationship. It requires nurturement. Sometimes you're not going to be there. Sometimes you are going to be there. You may not show up. You probably can't show up. But I think, like Ashley said, that sisterhood is important. I mean, there's no stranger to me. If I like you, you say something funny and we vibe, I'm going to give you a chance. Because I love women. I love connection. And I just think it's beautiful to have that. And I feel sorry. That's a red flag for me. If you're a female and I meet you and you like, I don't do women, I'm like, okay.
But I want to circle back too, because we talking about the conference, but I think what's going to be powerful in the conference is that this is the first time that we're going to be in person. And though these virtual platforms allow us the luxury of being able to connect, I think that the energy that we are trying to create at our conference in Atlanta, March the 25th at Hotel Coley, is going to be something that you feel. Like the feeling that you get for those of us who are HBCU graduates. You know, when you leave homecoming and you on that homecoming high because it was just good energy and your soul got fed, or the first time you go back to your home church that you ain't been to and the pastor got a real good sermon, you're like, oh my God, I feel this is what we're going to create. So outside of it being us having some dynamic speakers that we are excited to start announcing soon, right? It's going to be the energy. It's going to be the energy of being in a room with people whose spirits are open, who are looking for connection, who are looking to empower, who are looking to love, who are looking to show grace. So it's going to be a space that you feel. I mean, you get a vibe from who we are on these platforms, but this will be the first time in a long time that we've been able to feel the energy in this space. We had the opportunity to speak at a conference in Orlando in June, and it was a small conference, but the energy from that little session, the whole time, people came like, oh my God, I love y'all. Where's the next things? Because the energy is something that I think that he was intentional in placing the 4 of us together in our different circles and how we are going to be intertwined and how they overlap and how we connect people. So I believe in the intentionality of how God shows up in my life. And I believe that this forum, this Fortitude Collective, the 4 founders that you're hearing from today, we all have something very unique, a very clear anointing. And when you get us all in the room, we're going to make the devil mad, but we're going to have a good time, like a real good time where we share information, where we see each other, where we have a good kiki and a good laugh. So I am most excited about our first in-person conference, March the 25th in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you are hearing us on this amazing platform, we want to see you there. We want you to get in the car with your good girlfriends or your niece or your neighbor, your line sister, your HBCU graduate, your church member. However you got to get there, bus, plane, train, car, walk, ride. We just would love to see you in Atlanta because we're going to have a good old time.
I love it. I love it.
I told you she always come through with a word. There's always a good word in there.
Amen. Just get there.
Just get there.
So you know what? You all have said so many amazing things. And I know that as a team, as you mentioned, You all have been blessed to wear so many different hats. What advice would you give to others based on your individual experiences about making sure that you are seen, heard, and valued?
Mm-hmm.
See, they be pausing for me to start first, and I'm trying to be quiet.
I would say one to be still and listen in different situations, right? Because I think sometimes we're quick to act and we don't let the information sink in. We don't really think and allow ourselves to think clearly and allow our spirit to really talk to us and speak to us about what we're about to do or what we're thinking about doing. I would always add in something Ashley says all the time: step out on faith, right? So sometimes there may be something in your spirit that is saying, you should do this, and you're nervous and you're scared, you're not sure it's going to work out. Um, you just have to step out on faith and know that everything is going to work out the way that it's already been planned. Like, we get so nervous and scared and have fear and anxiety about things that are already written, right? It's already going to happen the way that it has been ordained for it to happen for you. So you can't let that deter you from doing it. I live in two different states right now. I work in one state, my family is in one state, but we make it work because I took a step and a leap of faith. And I knew that God wouldn't put me in a position or give me an opportunity that I wasn't going to be able to thrive in, and that my family wasn't going to be able to adapt to and be successful through. Right. So I think that's a lot of it. It's praying, it's being faithful, and it's having that circle of friends and those people that can hold you accountable. Because I think that's the other thing you need out of your sister circle is that accountability. Call me out on my BS when I'm saying this is something that I wanted for my life, and now I'm becoming apprehensive about it. Bring me back to reality and remind me of the things that I said that I wanted and how it's aligning for me, and for me not to let that opportunity pass by.
Fantastic.
All right. So for me, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is that we are all powerful, right? I have a big personality, and it takes up a lot of space. And for a long time, learning how to wield that power was a growing point, right? Full account and full stock on how powerful and how much energy that we have. If you come into a room with a bad attitude, you affect the room, right? And we have to regulate. I'm not suggesting that we should always be happy, but I think we should always be aware of our power. How we have the power to sway a room, the power to affect change, and the power to do nothing. We need to be more conscious of the power that we yield. And then I wholeheartedly believe in the power of connection. I do not believe we are put on this earth to work in solo and be alone. So who you are connected to, the connections that you don't think matter, they matter. Being nice to people, it costs you nothing, right? When someone is being out of pocket or rude or aggressive, it costs you nothing to be nice, right? So one of the biggest lessons that I have been learning as I'm maturing professionally is that the relationships and the connections matter. I say all the time, I've only applied for 2 jobs in my career. I've had about 8, but I've only had 2 job applications because of connections, because of how I show up and how I bring myself to the room, bring myself to the table matters. And I think sometimes we don't fully take stock of how the connections, they matter. You have to be connected. You have to give grace. You have to hold people accountable, and you have to be and do your best. Tamika talked about accountability. We all have to hold our sisters accountable for being their best. So I have a blind spot for Black women at work, right? But that blind spot also means when you come janky, I'm going to tell you, baby, don't come to a meeting looking like that again. Your shirt was wrinkled. Okay. You were late. You were on your phone most of the meeting, right? Those are the type of how accountability shows up for me professionally, is that I'm going to give you the space, but you better come to the space in a way that is as powerful as you know you are. So my 2 things are: be aware of your power and how you have the ability to shift atmospheres. And then 2, be mindful of the connections and those that you don't need to be connected to. Every connection ain't for you. There's some deals that are going to come to the table that come to us like it ain't right. So have that stillness, as Tamika talks about, to actually discern and evaluate connection. But they are important, and we're not in this space alone. So Connection and power are my two.
I think mine would be going back to what I said earlier. I think it's fine to walk in faith and fear. A long time ago, I really took hold of walking by faith and not by sight. And as I have grown, as I have learned some hard lessons in life, I realized that, you can walk by faith and not by sight, but don't let the fear of doing that stop you from actually doing that. And so I think that's one thing that I want people to know, that I want you to make sure that you are being true to who you are. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be unsure. You know, pray about it or whatever it is that you do, meditate. I was gonna say something else, but I'm gonna leave that alone. Whatever it is that you do to calm your nerves, do that, right? Like sit with it, sit with your decisions. I'm an Aries, fire sign. I'm hot blooded. Some of the things that Jacia said, I probably need to take heed to, all of these things, which is a good thing about this group because I learn from us as well. But I think just being okay with who you are right now. Like you can get to, being able to be in a room and just sit and learn and then speak. You can get to, I've never been taught how to be in a professional space, but I've been told and I recognize now that I need to be there, but I'm not there yet. It's okay to be where you are, right? And so I think that's what I want people to know. That's what my experiences have taught me about being seen, being heard, being valued. I think a lot of times most times we look at things from our perspective and our experiences, and we judge things based on that, judging whether you're it's a good judgment or whatever. But like everybody doesn't have those same experiences. So everybody's not going to show up in the way that you think they should show up. So giving grace to people, trying to step back and look at things from a different perspective. I think all of those things are important, and all of those things aid in you being able to be seen, heard, valued, and understood. Be okay with where you are, especially if you're striving to be better. Take it away, Quan.
I think you covered all of it. I mean, I'll say for me is just being present and being intentional. And I think Jacia said it earlier as far as relationships. Relationships matter, and making sure that even if you don't have the confidence yet, if you're prepared, you can still posture because you've done the work. You're prepared. You're showing up. I think for me, it's just making sure that being seen and being heard is always making sure that someone can count on me. Like you can count on me to get what I say I'm going to get done. You can count on me to deliver. You can count on me to bring others along. You can count on me to, make a way. I think that's really important. And also just being, understanding, sometimes just listening to someone else's point of view can open up, opportunity for you to make connections. So I'll say for me, it's just being intentional and present. That allows me to be seen because I'm going to always show up prepared. I'm going to be prepared.
Yes. Well, know that we appreciate you all sharing your perspective tonight, sharing more about the Fortitude Collective and what you all are doing to really help others find their voice and also be valued in those spaces. So fantastic. And you will see from the comments just a lot of support for the messages that you all have shared. Shauna just said amazing messages. Fatima said, I love this. I will continue to tune in. The Queen Print LLC, great conversation. Jennifer Roke said, very well said. So Thank you all so much for tuning in and supporting us tonight as we continue to venture on and share perspectives. And thank you to the wonderful ladies of the Fortitude Collective, the fabulous founders who are not only focused on their own lives, but I love the fact that they are focused on giving back and helping others find their voice and creating the space, as you all stated, as part of your mission for the next generation of Black and Brown women that reaffirms, supports, and encourages them to bring their chair to every space they occupy. But I think what's even more powerful is that a lot of this discussion transcends any type of divide or line, because anyone can benefit from the information that you all shared. So I just love the authenticity, the truth, and just the value that you all have shared with us tonight. So again, thank you to the founders of the Fortitude Collective, and thank you all for tuning in to the Perspective View podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and until next time, keep on keeping on and have a happy holiday.
And get your tickets to
Yes.
Yes.
Unbossed but Bother, March 25th in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
Thank you.
And all of the information will be in the show description as well. So have a
Thank
good night,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Mm.